What makes our Jamaican stories so authentic? Well, joining us this morning to share how there is growing global appetite, I'm telling you, for authentic Jamaican stories and films, which are storytelling as well, is Emmy-nominated producer, writer, and director Sasha-Gay Lewis. Morning, Sasha-Gay. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Man, first of all, I got to tell you publicly how proud I am of you for achieving all the things that you have. Born and bred and grown and raised Jamaican girl.
Absolutely.
Tell me about the journey.
I don't think you have time to hear all of it.
Give me an abbreviated version.
So I have been working in the U.S. Film industry for a decade now. Of course, you know, this isn't where it started. It started 7 years before in Jamaica, working in LA and then transitioned into New York, specifically in the unscripted space. I did dabble in the scripted space for a little bit, but I guess because I'm more fascinated by human psychology and behavior, like I was drawn to documentaries and unscripted content. And I think, you know, it has been challenging. It has been amazing. It has been motivating. I think ultimately it has just allowed me to show up in the best way and be the best storyteller that I can, because I see myself as a writer who's just using film and screen as a medium or the canvas on which I tell stories.
Yeah, I love documentaries, and I'm finding that documentaries are becoming more and more popular for viewers. If you look at the streaming platforms now, there are a lot of documentaries. In my era, we were just looking at National Geographic and
right.
Right. Yeah. Is it because of I guess the storytelling style in documentaries has changed and the subject matter has changed?
Absolutely. It has definitely evolved. I think the intersection of traditional principles of documentary storytelling with, visual aesthetics and language of fiction storytelling has created this kind of, resurgence of documentary, or what we tend to call as hybrid docs here in the US, where it takes it away out of sometimes the long and tedious and sometimes not so interesting aspect of like traditional docs. And it has evolved the medium. I think I tell people all the time that documentary is a genre, right? Just like any other genres. And so like you are allowed, as a creative and a storyteller, you're allowed to use the medium that suits your story best and to not be restricted by the traditional boxes of what documentaries can be.
When we look at your body of work, there are themes about identity, belonging, survival, redemption, resistance, which are universal themes, but also themes that resonate so strongly with Caribbean people and people with a migrant story.
Absolutely.
What inspires you to tell stories along this kind of theme? I mean, you're a migrant. It could be it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I am the person you just described, right? And I think like it is ultimately the things I explore in my work are things that I am either like questioning or challenged by. And I do feel that like, themes of like belonging, which is reflected in my film Reopening Night, or this doc series Where Cultures Collide, or even, resistance and how specifically resistance can lead to liberation, as seen in like The Incursion, or looking at what happens to us when we are in survival mode, right? What we gain or what we lose through films like Surviving Suicide that spotlight the story of suicide survivors. I think ultimately these are universal themes and themes that I feel like as individuals we're constantly interacting with. And therefore that is why it informs my work. But also I'm a student of literature, right? And so like work such as, Toni Morrison's work, she's one of like my all-time favorite works of Jean Rice and Walcott and, those Jamaica Kincaid. Like those are writers that actually first like stoked my love for like story. And I know those are like, it's the written word, but it was those written words and how they wrote those words that allowed my imagination to be activated so that I could dream in film. And so ultimately what I'm doing is kind of building up on what I see as works of my ancestors to elevate it and to kind of what I call humanize and decolonize the lens, to kind of make the bigger point that as Black people, because that is my identity, we have always been enough. Yeah. Right. We have always understood how to navigate this world in a way that has been beneficial and substantial and healing to us. So that's why those are the themes that shows up in my work.
Yeah, I like what you're saying because we have a legacy of storytelling. I mean, you mentioned Toni Morrison, Jean Rees. We have our own Erna Bradba, and I could go on, who also tell very fascinating stories. But you don't get to work with HBO and MTV and all those legacy media companies by just saying, hey, I want to tell stories. What do you think has been the key to your success as a storyteller?
I think it's because I'm not afraid of tackling the hard and challenging things. I think it's also because as a Jamaican, I know how to be adaptable. I will outwork anybody. And I think it is the fact that like there is a curiosity that I'm informed by as a kid that grew up in rural Jamaica who had parents that were Higglers, but then went to UE and worked in corporate Jamaica, and just having to interact in those different spaces and figuring out how to navigate those spaces, how to take what is good and what is bad. Because ultimately, in a way, in my film work or even in the film environment, that is what I am doing. And I think I am known to be able to, get the access to emotionally tap into the stories of people and to lean into the harder stuff. And so because of that, that has led to my body of work. I think for me, the challenge is understanding, because I see it as a gift, to be honest with you, and a calling. And I think like it's for me to be able to balance what it takes from me emotionally and spiritually to tap into the truth of people's story, because, that is also part of the work, to be able to balance that out in ways that replenish and nourish me as a filmmaker, because it's not just about the stories that you make. It's also about the people making the stories, right? It's the how, it's the why, it's the what. And so that is what I believe has been, the influence as to like why I've been able to build a body of work, and ultimately the understanding that this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It is potential incremental steps that you take, right? And so being strategic about like, okay, what will lead to sustainability and longevity for me as a filmmaker and the work that I do. So those are some of the things I believe that contribute.
I think one of the things that I also admire about you, Sasha-Gay, is one of the things is you've also invested in your craft, the knowledge of your craft. You did an MFA in documentary. And so a lot of young people, when they see me and they say, I want to pursue a career in the arts, or what should I do? And I always say to them, learn some more, be knowledgeable, study. How do you think having invested in that aspect of your craft has helped you to be successful?
Oh, immensely. Like, I think there is a school of thought within the film space that, you don't have to go to film school. You can learn it. And with the proliferation of like social media influencer and like your phone becoming like, a camera, there is this belief that, just practice, but it's not one or the other. And that's because like, I don't live either or life, right? I give what I call the and life. It is this and that. And so for me, it was important that, yes, I get the experience, the practical experience, but I also understand the industry, because the film industry is a business first and foremost, right? And so a lot of times the things that are prohibiting us in our approach around the stories we tell is because we don't understand the business of it. And I think going to film school allowed me, one, to understand the industry in the US, which is completely different from the industry in Nigeria, in Jamaica, in China, in Mexico, in India, and also to get a real grip on all the business that happens. Like, what does it take to really get something out in the world? Because when you do see something on your screen, that thing might have taken 8 years, 10 years. There was a lot of little movements that was happening behind the scene to make it work. It's not just, oh, I think my story is great and it should be told, right? And so being able to access that here in the US and to have that context, have that knowledge, has absolutely like impacted my career tremendously. I don't know if I was still in Jamaica, I would have been able to like have the support and the access that I do as I am here. And I mean, that just means that there's more for us to do locally. But I think like we do have great stories that we can tell. It's about how understanding in the US system, how do you market stories? How do you tell stories? How do you make it resonant without losing the details, right? And so those are the things that film school taught me, as well as the technical aspects of it, so I can understand what informs the visual aesthetic, right? What is the audio world? Because it's not just visual, right? It's the writing, right? It's the writing, it's the directing, it's how it is made and produced. It's all of those things that is like you're trying to figure out, there is this ideal mix. Because they teach you about story structure and story arc and where it should build and when the conflict should come in and what does the resolution mean. It doesn't mean it is resolving the way that we think it is, but it, you know, getting to the heart of your story. So all of those things I learned through coming here and studying, through investing in my craft, you know, whether it's doing courses or signing up for Sundance collab labs and just doing those things. So I'm forever a student. So I'm constantly learning, and that learning informs my work and my approach.
Beautiful. We gotta go, but I gotta ask one more question. What are the stories now that you feel still need to be told? I have a sports background, and just this weekend I saw Juliet Cuthbert-Flynn, and I said, you have to do a story about your life. It's too powerful. It's so funny you say that. We should definitely talk. I have one of those in my development, what I call dungeon, not because like things stay in development for long, but I think I am interested in stories that are rooted in spirituality, like heritage, Black joy, stories that like explore like untapped perspectives of the Caribbean and the African diaspora. Because I think there is richness in exploring those narratives. I think, you know, there is the complexity of the human experience is fascinating to me. I am thoroughly like passionate about human psychology, understanding why people do the things they do, why they say, why they act the way they act, those kinds of stories, because I feel like, you know, resilience is one thing, but like resilience approach from the point of view of like the messy and the miraculous in the resilience, right? Yeah. Not just like the overcoming, because it is a process, right? And so like those are the stories that I am still interested in exploring. You know, stories around youth and just like, you know, kids and just how they see the world before, of course, they're impacted by all other things. All right, Sasha, they wrapped me a long time. I just love chatting. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us, and congratulations. And we look forward to even greater stories coming from you.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to telling them.
That was Emmy-nominated producer, writer, and director, Sasha-Gay Lewis. Coming up next, we discuss the initiative to put health and wellness in our entertainment industry. More on Smile after the break.